Final question. This person says, and the reason I answer this is because it comes up in Facebook discussions constantly. I see it in comments. I shouldn't read the comments, I know, but I do sometimes. And I see this. And they say, what do you make of the verse where Jesus says, judge not? And let me answer that this way. That's not what Jesus said. You know, we get upset when people take sound bites, you know, a few words out of a sentence, and then they go and take it and say, this is what so-and-so said, and it's devoid of its context. And we go, yeah, but it's lost its meaning. Well, don't lose the meaning of what Jesus means. The whole sentence actually in Matthew 7 is, judge not that you be not judged, right? And the center of gravity of that statement is not don't judge. The center of gravity of that statement is don't be a hypocrite, or there's a reciprocity. Be aware that your judgments will be dished up back to you in the ultimate and final judgment before God. And Jesus is thinking about that subject in this chapter. Remember, it's the bit where he says, not everyone who comes to me on that day and says, Lord, Lord, will come into the end. He's talking about judgment on the day to come. And he's just reminding us of this very stern warning about hypocrisy. And he says, he says, if you judge, you will be judged. And he expounds it further. He says, for the measure according to which you give is the measure which will be given back to you. And he expands himself, right? And then he expands further with a story. And he says, you know, if you've got a beam hanging out of your eye, don't walk up to somebody else and say, mate, you've got a speck of dust in your eye. Huh? He says, you know, this is what he's talking about. It's hypocrisy. It's the stern warning that as you judge others, be prepared, for that will come back upon you. He's not saying don't make wise conclusions about right and wrong. He's not saying don't make wise conclusions about people's character when you have to. Because the very next statement is, you know, cast not your pearls before swine and don't give to dogs what is holy, right? So who are the swine? Who are the dogs? You know, you've got to use discernment, and the call to discernment is throughout the Bible. And here is another example where he says, use your discernment by all means. And I've been in situations like that where you shut your mouth and you stop speaking because you know that you can't say anything to this person. You just can't without them turning around and throwing it back at you and not listening. It's a lost cause. You need to be able to make those wise judgments. But see, the warning that he gives then with this statement about don't judge that you be not judged goes to the heart of the issue, which is hypocrisy. And this is a very insightful exploration into human character. It's an insightful exploration into human character because it's basically saying, do you know what your problem is? Do you know what we all do? We're all very critical of others and very generous to ourselves. There's a statement, and I can't quite remember it, but it's, oh, that the Lord would give me the grace to see myself as others see me. To see myself even better as he sees me. To see myself for the truth of who I am, not sort of trumped up denialism that I treat myself well and I don't judge myself and I don't see the sins in my own heart, but I'm always pointing the finger at other people. You know, we know how dangerous this is. A lot of personality disorders, you take a narcissistic personality disorder, that is somebody who is unable to see themselves for who they really are. That is somebody who is only able to see themselves through a positive lens. And then that ends up causing all sorts of harm and difficulty for the people around them. It's a really awful and toxic thing. But Jesus is saying there's a little bit of narcissism in all of you. There's a little bit of, you know, I'm not that bad in all of you. And this is why the very beginning of the Christian life, if you go back to the start of this very sermon that he says this in, Matthew 7 he says this, and Matthew 5 is when he starts. And he says, you know, the beginning of the Christian life is to be poor in spirit, to have a lower opinion of yourself. The beginning of the Christian life is repentance, to mourn and be comforted, you know, to repent before God. The beginning of the Christian life is meekness, to actually seek God's strength and not to be trumped up on self. And so this is a very, very serious warning about hypocrisy. This does not diminish the seriousness of the statement. If anything, it makes it worse because we do go around and make judgments and draw conclusions, and we do, you know, we behave in a certain way where we hold everyone to a standard. And just know, and this is what freaks me out sometimes when I speak, when I give these, you know, videos and go to places and talk, we'll be held accountable. will be held accountable. So, you know, the center of that comment and that context is hypocrisy. Sadly, that's human nature. But you know, as Christians, we can ask God to reveal our true selves to us more and more, and to, as a result, heed that warning. Hey, one more thing. You know, I've been looking at the metrics and I figured out something. You guys are watching the videos and not subscribing. So please help us out a great deal by hitting the like button and then hitting subscribe, hitting the bell as well so you get the notifications. It helps us out a really great deal, and you can click here to see more videos.